billionaire black single dad went on blind dates as a poor man until he met a waitress who saw the man behind the money. Most people believe that having $1 billion is the ultimate cure. They think that when your bank account has 10 figures, pain is just an inconvenience and loneliness is something you can simply buy your way out of. But Dante Winslow knew the bitter truth. He was the king of a logistics empire, a man who could move mountains of cargo across oceans with a single phone call. He lived in a penthouse that looked down on the clouds. But in the silence of the night, Dante was the poorest man in Chicago. He had lost his wife, he was raising a daughter who barely remembered her mother, and every time he tried to find love, he found someone falling in love with his black card, not his heart. Tired of being a walking wallet, Dante made a desperate, dangerous choice. He created a disguise. He traded his Italian silk suits for a thrift store flannel shirt and scuffed work boots. He pretended to be a struggling warehouse worker to find a woman who was real. He thought the lie would protect him. He thought he was in control, but he never calculated for Nia. He never expected to fall deeply in love with a waitress who was drowning in debt, fighting a losing battle to keep her parents home, while he sat on a fortune that could save her in a heartbeat. And he certainly didn't expect the devastating moment when the bill for his lies would finally come due. Dante would be forced to make a terrifying choice: keep his secret and watch the woman he loved lose everything, or reveal his billions, save her home, and risk losing her forever because of his betrayal. If you have ever felt like the world only judges you for what you have and not who you are, this story is for you. Stick around, because the moment Dante takes off the mask will change the way you look at trust forever. To understand why a billionaire would dress in rags, you have to understand the silence. It was a Tuesday evening in late November. The wind off Lake Michigan was howling, rattling the windows of the city's skyscrapers. But inside the penthouse on the 45th floor, the air was still, perfectly climate-controlled, perfectly filtered, perfectly dead. Dante Winslow stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass, looking out at the city lights. They glittered like diamonds scattered on black velvet. Behind him, the apartment was a masterpiece of modern design. The floors were imported marble, the furniture was custom leather, and the art on the walls was insured for more than most people earned in a lifetime. But Dante hated it. He turned away from the window and walked down the long, echoing hallway. He stopped at a door painted a soft pastel lavender. He pushed it open gently, the hinges silent. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a nightlight shaped like a star. In the center of the bed, buried under a mountain of blankets, was 5-year-old Sophie. She was sleeping soundly, her chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Clutched tightly in her arm was Mr. Truffins, a stuffed elephant that had lost one eye and most of its fuzz years ago. Dante walked over and knelt by the bed. He brushed a stray curl of hair off Sophie's forehead. She looked so much like her mother, Alana, that it sometimes physically hurt him to breathe. It had been 3 years since the day the world stopped. Alana hadn't been sick. There was no long hospital stay, no time for goodbyes. She had been in the kitchen, laughing at a joke about burnt toast. Then a sudden gasp, a collapse, a congenital brain aneurysm. By the time the ambulance arrived, Dante was a widower. He was left with $1 billion company, a 2-year-old daughter, and a hole in his chest the size of a crater. For the first 2 years, he drowned himself in work. He let the nannies handle the bath times and the bedtime stories, while he merged companies and fired executives. But then, the drawing happened. Sophie had come home from preschool a few months ago with a drawing. The teacher had asked the class to draw their families. Most kids drew stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Sophie had drawn a little girl standing alone in a big room. In the corner of the paper, she drew a man in a blue suit holding a phone. That drawing shattered Dante. It woke him up.
He realized he was building an empire for a daughter who didn't even know him. He stepped back from the CEO role, delegating the day-to-day operations to his board. He started coming home for dinner. He started reading the bedtime stories. But he also realized something else. He was lonely. A bone-deep, aching loneliness. Sophie needed a mother figure, and Dante missed having a partner. He missed the warmth of a hand in his. He missed having someone to ask, "How was your day?" and actually mean it. So he tried dating, and it was a disaster. Dante walked into his massive kitchen and poured a glass of water. He leaned against the counter, thinking about the last 3 months. He had gone on 5 dates. The first woman, a model, had asked him about his private jet availability before the appetizers arrived. The second woman, a corporate lawyer, had spent the entire dinner pitching him a business idea for a startup. The third woman had Googled his net worth at the table and audibly gasped. He wasn't a person to them. He was a transaction. He was a walking ATM machine with a pulse. His phone buzzed on the counter. It was Tariq, his oldest friend and personal attorney. "You're not going out tonight, are you?" Tariq's voice came through the speaker. "I have a date," Dante said, staring at his reflection in the dark window. "With who? The Duchess of York? Another Instagram influencer?" Tariq joked, but there was concern in his voice. "No," Dante said. "Her name is Karen. We matched on that app I told you about." "The app where you used a fake name," Tariq sighed. "Dante, this is a bad idea. You're Dante Winslow. You can't just pretend to be regular." "Why not?" Dante asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "I used to be regular, Tariq. Before the logistics boom, I was just a guy from the South Side. I want to see if anyone can connect with that guy, the guy who likes jazz and burns toast, not the guy who owns the Winslow building." "You're playing with fire," Tariq warned. "Lies have a shelf life, D. If you meet someone real, how are you going to explain that you're actually one of the richest men in the state?" "I'll cross that bridge when I get to it," Dante said. "Right now, I just want to have a conversation where someone doesn't ask me for a loan." Dante hung up. He finished his water and walked to his walk-in closet. On one side hung rows of suits worth $5,000 each. On the other side, tucked away in the back, was a small section of clothes he had bought at a thrift store. A faded red flannel shirt, a pair of jeans with oil stains on the knee, heavy scuffed work boots, a cheap digital watch with a rubber strap. Dante took off his silk robe. He put on the flannel. It was rough against his skin, scratchy and stiff. He pulled on the jeans. He laced up the boots. He looked in the mirror. The billionaire was gone. In his place was a tired, working-class man, a man who looked like he carried the weight of the world on his back, not in his bank account. Dante took a deep breath. For the first time all day, he felt like he could breathe. The rain was coming down hard by the time Dante arrived at the Rusty Spoon. It was a diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place with flickering neon signs and menus that stuck to the table. It smelled of frying bacon, old coffee, and damp coats. Dante walked in and shook off his umbrella. He scanned the room. It was busy for a Tuesday. Truck drivers, nurses ending their shifts, families looking for a cheap meal. He found a booth in the back. The red vinyl seat was cracked, repaired with a strip of silver duct tape. Dante slid in. He checked his cheap digital watch, 7:15 p.m. Karen was 15 minutes late. He tried to calm his nerves. This was it, the test. He had told Karen on the app that he was a shift supervisor at a warehouse. He told her he worked long hours and money was tight. If she showed up and stayed, it meant she was interested in him. The bell above the door chimed. A woman walked in. She was dressed in a sharp beige trench coat and high heels that clicked loudly on the tile floor. She shook out her designer umbrella with a grimace. She scanned the room, her eyes passing over the locals with a look of mild disdain. When her eyes landed on Dante, they stopped. She frowned. She pulled out her phone, checked the photo, and looked at him again. She walked over slowly. She didn't smile. "Dante?" Karen asked. "Hi, Karen," Dante said, starting to stand up to greet her. She didn't take the seat. She stood there, her hands shoved deep into her coat pockets. She looked at his flannel shirt. She looked at the oil stain on his jeans. She looked at the scuffed boots.
"You look different than your pictures," she said, her voice flat. "I came straight from work," Dante lied, his heart pounding. "I work in a warehouse across town. The shift ran late." "A warehouse," she repeated. It wasn't a question, it was a judgment. "You didn't mention you were a laborer." "Does it matter?" Dante asked, trying to keep his voice light. "It pays the bills, sometimes." Karen laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound that drew the attention of the couple at the next table. "Look, Dante, I'm going to be honest because I don't have time to waste. I'm looking for someone with ambition, someone who is going places. You look like you're stuck." "I have ambition," Dante said quietly. "I'm a good father. I work hard." "Yeah, well, that's sweet," she sneered. "But I don't date guys who look like they fix toilets for a living. I have standards. You should probably delete my number." She didn't even say goodbye. She turned around and walked out, the door slamming shut behind her. Dante stood there, half risen from the booth. He felt the blood rush to his face. It wasn't anger, it was humiliation. He looked around. A few people were staring. He felt small. He felt invisible. He sank back into the booth. This was the reality he had been hiding from in his penthouse. Without the suit, without the power, people didn't give him a second glance. They didn't see his intelligence or his kindness. They just saw the boots. He put his head in his hands, staring at the chipped laminate table. He felt a wave of self-pity wash over him. Maybe Tariq is right, he thought. Maybe this is a stupid game. Rough start to the night? The voice was soft, melodic, and warm. Dante looked up. Standing at the end of the table was a waitress. Her name tag read Nia. She was beautiful, but she looked exhausted. Her dark skin glowed under the warm diner lights, but there were deep purple shadows under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in messy braids, and her apron was stained with coffee. She was holding a coffee pot, looking at him with an expression Dante hadn't seen in years. It wasn't pity, it was empathy. "You could say that," Dante muttered. "Apparently I don't meet the dress code for a first date." Naya didn't laugh. She didn't make a joke. She reached over and flipped his mug right side up. She poured the steaming dark roast until it reached the brim. "Her loss," Naya said. Her voice was firm. "You look like a man who just came off a 10-hour shift. There's dignity in that. My dad was a mechanic. He came home with grease under his fingernails every single day for 30 years. He was the best man I ever knew." Dante looked at her. He really looked at her. In a room full of people who saw a bum, she saw a man. "I'm Dante," he said. "I'm Naya," she smiled. It was a tired smile, but it reached her eyes. "And this coffee is on the house, Dante. You look like you need a win tonight." "I can pay," Dante said instinctively, reaching for his pocket where his wallet, filled with cash, sat. "I know you can," Naya said gently, "but let me do this. Sometimes we all just need a break." That small act, a $2 cup of coffee given by a waitress who clearly didn't have much herself, hit Dante harder than any luxury gift he had ever received. It was pure kindness. No agenda, no expectations, just one human being seeing another. If you have ever been judged by your appearance instead of your heart, or if you've ever judged someone else too quickly, take a second to like this video right now. Let's show the world that character matters more than clothes. Dante didn't go home after the coffee. He ordered a burger. He stayed. Whenever the diner slowed down, Naya would swing by his booth to refill his coffee. They started talking. "So the warehouse?" Naya asked, leaning against the booth divider. "Heavy lifting?" "Yeah," Dante lied, his mind racing to recall the details of his own company's shipping floors. "Lots of boxes. Inventory. My back kills me by Friday." "I hear that," Naya said, rubbing her own shoulder. "Double shifts on these floors are no joke. I think my feet are permanently swollen." "Why the double shifts?" Dante asked. Naya hesitated. A shadow crossed her face. "Just life. Bills don't pay themselves, right?" "Right," Dante said. "I'm doing it for my little girl, Sophie. She's 5. Naya's face lit up. "You're a dad?" "A single dad," Dante said. He pulled out his phone.
He had swapped his sleek smartphone for an older model with a cracked screen and showed her a picture of Sophie. "Oh my goodness," Naya cooed. "Look at those cheeks. She is absolutely precious, Dante." "She's my world," Dante said honestly. Her mom passed away 3 years ago." Naya's expression softened into pure sorrow. She reached out and touched Dante's hand. Her skin was rough from work, but her touch was electric. "I am so, so sorry, Dante," she whispered. "Raising a little one alone, doing the work of 2 parents, that is the hardest job in the world. You're doing good. I can tell just by the way you look at her picture." They talked until closing time. Dante learned that Naya loved old R&B records. He learned that she was allergic to strawberries. He learned that she hated the cold Chicago winter, but loved how the snow looked on the trees. When Dante finally left that night, walking back to his hidden luxury car around the block, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt hope. For the next 3 weeks, Dante lived a double life. By day, he was CEO Winslow. He wore suits that cost thousands. He sat at the head of a mahogany table in a glass boardroom, deciding the fate of shipping routes and mergers. He was cold, efficient, and powerful. But the moment the sun went down, he couldn't wait to leave. He would rush to his car, change into his flannel and boots, and drive to the South Side. He became a regular at the Rusty Spoon. The other staff knew him as Dante the warehouse guy. The cook would wave at him. He and Naya grew closer. It was a slow burn, built on shared glances and quiet conversations amidst the clatter of silverware. But as they got closer, Dante started to notice things. He noticed that Naya was getting thinner. He noticed that she sometimes winced when she picked up a heavy tray. He noticed that she would stare off into space when she thought no one was watching, a look of terrifying anxiety on her face.
One snowy Tuesday, 3 weeks after they met, Dante finally asked. The diner was empty. The snow was piling up against the windows. Naya was sitting across from him, sipping a tea. "You look tired, Naya," Dante said softly. "More than usual." Naya sighed. She put the cup down. Her hand was trembling. "It's just me now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My folks passed away 2 years ago. It was a car accident. Slick roads, bad storm. They were gone instantly." "I'm sorry," Dante said. "I didn't know." "I'm trying to keep their house," she admitted. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's a small place on 43rd Street. Nothing fancy. But it's the house I grew up in. Every scratch on the floorboards, the height chart on the doorframe. It's them. It's the only thing I have left." She took a shaky breath. "But my mom, she had heart problems before the accident. She was in the hospital for months. They took out a second mortgage to pay the bills. They didn't have insurance. When they died, the debt fell to me." "The bank?" she asked. "They're calling every day," Naya said, looking down at her tea. "I'm in arrears. I need $4,000 by the end of the month to stop the foreclosure. I'm picking up every shift I can. I'm cleaning houses on the weekends. But the interest, it eats up everything I make." Dante stared at her. $4,000. He had spent $4,000 on a bottle of wine at a business dinner the previous night. He made $4,000 in interest every few minutes. His hand instinctively twitched toward his back pocket. He could pull out his wallet right now. He could pull out the black card. He could say, "Swipe this, charge $5,000, keep the change." It would be nothing to him, less than nothing. But he froze. If he paid it, the illusion would shatter. "How does a warehouse worker have a limitless credit card?" she would ask. "Why did you lie to me?" she would ask. "Who are you really?"
Fear gripped him. He was terrified that if she knew he was a billionaire, the warmth in her eyes would vanish. He was scared she would look at him the way Karen did, as a target. Or worse, she would feel betrayed that he had been slumming it with her. So Dante Winslow, the man who could move mountains, did the most cowardly thing of his life. He did nothing. "You're a fighter, Nia," he said, hating the hollow sound of his own voice. "You'll figure it out. Something'll come up." Nia smiled, but it was a broken, sad thing. "Yeah, maybe. I'm a fighter." Pause for a moment. Put yourself in Dante's shoes. You have the money to save the person you love from ruin, but revealing it means admitting you've been lying to them for weeks. Would you write the check and risk the relationship, or would you keep the secret and hope she survives? Tell me what you would do in the comments below. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday, 2 days before the end of the month. Dante walked into the diner feeling lighter than usual. He had brought a small gift, a plastic toy elephant he had picked up. He wanted to give it to Nia to give to the little boy who sometimes came in with his grandmother. He wanted to show her he remembered the small details. But when he pushed open the door, the atmosphere was wrong. The jukebox was silent. The cook was looking out the service window with a grim expression. Nia wasn't behind the counter. Dante walked further in. He found her in the back booth, the one furthest from the door. She was huddled in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her head was buried in her arms. Her shoulders were shaking violently. Dante dropped the toy on a table and rushed over. "Nia?" he asked, panic rising in his chest. "Nia, what happened?" She looked up. Her face was swollen, her eyes red and raw. She looked like someone who had been holding up the sky for years and had finally been crushed by the weight of it. She didn't speak. She just shoved a crumpled piece of paper across the table toward him. Dante smoothed it out. It was a legal notice from the bank. Notice of default and sale. "They moved the deadline," Nia whispered. Her voice sounded like broken glass. "I thought I had until the 31st. I thought I had 3 more days to hustle. But the fine print, it says the funds must be cleared by noon on the last business day. That's tomorrow, Dante. Tomorrow at noon." She let out a sob that tore through the quiet diner. "I'm short. I sold my car yesterday. I sold my mom's wedding ring, but I'm still $1,000 short. They're going to take it. They're going to take my parents home. It's over." Dante stared at the paper. Then he looked at Nia. This woman who had treated him like a king when he looked like a pauper. This woman who worked until her feet bled. This woman who possessed more integrity in her little finger than his entire board of directors combined. She was being destroyed over an amount of money that he wouldn't even bend over to pick up off the sidewalk. The guilt hit him like a physical blow to the gut. He felt sick. He felt like a monster. He had been playing a game, a romantic little experiment, while she was fighting for her survival. He couldn't do it anymore. The lie had to end. "Nia," Dante said. His voice was different now. The waver was gone. The hesitation was gone. The voice of the CEO was creeping in. "Stop crying." She wiped her eyes with her apron, sniffing. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to dump this on you. You have Sophie to worry about. You don't need my drama. I don't know what to do." "Listen to me," Dante said. He reached out and took her hands. They were ice cold. He squeezed them tight. "Look at me." She met his eyes, confused by his intensity. "Meet me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., at the First National Bank downtown, the main branch." Nia shook her head, pulling her hands back slightly. "Why? I can't get a loan there, Dante. My credit score is destroyed from the medical bills. No major bank will touch me. I've tried." "Just trust me," he said. He leaned in, his eyes locking onto hers. "Do you trust me, Nia?" Yes, she whispered. "But what can we do? You work in a warehouse, Dante. We're both broke." "I have a friend," Dante lied, one final time. "Someone who owes me a favor. Just be there, please." Nia looked at Nia. She saw the desperation in his eyes. She saw a glimmer of hope where there had been none. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll be there." The next morning, Chicago was a landscape of gray concrete and gray sky.
The wind whipped through the downtown canyons, biting and cold. Nia stood outside the towering glass and steel structure of the First National Bank. She looked small against the massive stone pillars. She was wearing her best coat, a navy wool pea coat, but the cuffs were frayed. She clutched her purse to her chest like a shield. She checked her watch, 8:55 a.m. She was shivering, partially from the cold, partially from terror. She kept looking for Dante's battered old sedan. She kept looking for the flannel shirt. At exactly 9 a.m., a black Lincoln town car turned the corner. It was a massive, intimidating vehicle with tinted windows so dark they looked like mirrors. It glided silently to the curb, right in front of where Nia stood. Nia took a step back, assuming some VIP was arriving. She didn't want to be in the way. The driver's door opened. A large man in a dark suit, Marcus, Dante's security detail, stepped out. He walked around the car with professional grace and opened the rear passenger door. A polished leather shoe stepped onto the pavement, then a leg clad in navy blue wool. Dante stepped out. But it wasn't the Dante Nia knew. Gone were the work boots, gone were the oil-stained jeans, gone was the flannel. This man was wearing a bespoke Italian suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His shirt was crisp white starch. His tie was silk. On his wrist, the cheap digital watch was gone, replaced by a silver Rolex that caught the gray light. He looked powerful. He looked commanding. He looked like he owned the block. Nia's jaw dropped. She blinked, her brain refusing to process the image. "Dante?" she whispered, the name catching in her throat.
"Nia," he said. His voice was calm, steady. He buttoned his suit jacket and walked toward her. The crowd of commuters on the sidewalk seemed to part around him like water around a stone. "What is this?" Nia asked, backing away until her back hit the stone pillar of the bank. She looked at the car, then at the driver, then back at him. "Who are you?" "I am Dante Winslow," he said. He stopped 3 feet from her, giving her space. "And I have lied to you, and I am so, so sorry." "Winslow?" Nia gasped. The realization hit her like a slap. Everyone in Chicago knew the name Winslow. It was on the sides of the trucks that drove past the diner every day. Winslow Logistics. It was on the donor wall at the hospital where her mother died. You're the billionaire?" she stammered. Her voice was shaking. "The logistics guy?" Dante nodded slowly. "Yes." Nia's confusion morphed instantly into horror, then into a hot, blinding fury. "You pretended to be poor?" she shouted. She didn't care who was watching. "You came into my diner wearing those ridiculous boots, talking about your back hurting from lifting boxes? Why? Was this a joke? Was I some kind of experiment for you and your rich friends?" "No!" Dante stepped closer, his composure cracking. "No, Nia, never a joke. It was fear. I was tired of women wanting me for my money. I wanted to meet someone who liked me, just me, and I found you." "You found me?" Nia laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. Tears began to stream down her face. "You found me and you watched me drown, Dante. You sat there drinking your $2 coffee while I cried about losing my parents' home. You watched me sell my mother's ring, and you had this in your pocket the whole time?" She gestured to his suit, to the car, to the bank. "I know," Dante said. The shame was written all over his face. "I was a coward. I was scared that if I told you the truth, the magic would break. I was scared you'd look at me differently." "I do look at you differently," Nia cried. "I thought you were honest. I thought you were real. But you're just a liar in a nice suit." "Please," Dante said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I can't fix the lie, Nia, but I can fix the problem." He held the envelope out to her. "What is that?" she asked sharply. "It's the deed," Dante said softly. I met with the bank president at 7 a.m. I paid off the mortgage, the arrears, the interest, the principal. I paid the taxes for the next 5 years. The house is yours, Naya, free and clear. No one can ever take it from you." Naya stared at the envelope. Her hands were trembling violently. She looked at the paperwork. It was true. The stamps were there, paid in full.
She looked up at him. She didn't look happy. She looked broken. "You think you can just buy your way out of this?" she whispered. "No," Dante said. "I know I can't. I did this because I love you, Nia, and I couldn't watch you suffer one more day." "You don't love me," Nia said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You don't lie to the people you love. You don't test them." She snatched the envelope from his hand. "I'm taking this," she said, her eyes flashing, "not for you, but because my father worked himself to death for that house, and I won't let your ego be the reason I lose it." "Nia," Dante started. "Don't," she stopped him. "Don't come to the diner. Don't call me. You wanted to know if I liked Dante the man? I did. But I don't know who this is." She turned around, clutching the deed to her chest, and walked away down the busy street. She didn't look back. Dante stood there, frozen. The wind whipped around him. He had billions of dollars. He had just saved the woman he loved, but as he watched her disappear into the crowd, he felt poorer than he ever had in the flannel shirt. The next 2 weeks were a blur of misery. Dante went back to his life. He wore the suits, he went to the meetings, he made the deals, but the color had drained out of his world. The penthouse was silent again. The view of the city just looked cold. He tried to fix it the only way he knew how, with grand gestures. He sent a massive bouquet of white lilies, her favorite, to the diner. They were returned the next day with a note that said, "No." He sent a diamond bracelet. It came back via courier, unopened. He drove past the diner late at night just to see the lights on, but he didn't dare go in. He respected her wish, but the ache in his chest grew worse every day. Tariq found him in his office one evening, staring at a blank computer screen. "You look terrible," Tariq said, sitting on the edge of the desk. "She hates me," Dante said. "I saved her house, Tariq. Why doesn't that count for something?" "Because you didn't just give her money, Dee," Tariq said gently. "You took away her agency. You made her feel like a fool for trusting the warehouse guy. Trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can fix it, but you can still see the cracks in the reflection." Dante put his head in his hands. "So what do I do? How do I fix the cracks?" "Stop acting like a billionaire," Tariq said. "Stop sending diamonds. Be the guy she fell for. Be the dad." That Saturday morning, Dante was in the kitchen, trying to make pancakes. He was burning them, as usual. Sophie walked in, dragging Mr. Truffles. She climbed onto the stool. "Daddy," asked Sophie, "where is the nice lady, the one with the braids?" Dante sighed, flipping a blackened pancake. She's mad at Daddy, sweetie." "Why?" asked Sophie. "Because Daddy told a lie. I told a big lie, and it hurt her feelings." Sophie frowned. She thought about this for a long moment. "You have to say sorry," Sophie said. "I tried," Dante said. "She won't listen." "Maybe you need to show her," Sophie said. She hopped off the stool and ran to her room. She came back a moment later holding a piece of paper. "Show her this," Sophie said. Dante took the drawing. It was a new one. It showed the big stick figure, Dante, the little stick figure, Sophie, and a third stick figure with brown crayon braids. They were all holding hands under a giant lopsided rainbow. Dante stared at the drawing. His throat tightened. He realized Tariq was right. He had been trying to buy forgiveness. He needed to earn it. "Go get your coat, Soph," Dante said, a sudden resolve in his voice. "We're going for a ride." It was the lunch rush at the Rusty Spoon. The place was packed. The noise was a cacophony of clattering plates and sizzling grease. Nia was behind the counter, pouring coffee. She looked better, rested. The weight of the debt was gone from her shoulders, but her eyes were sad. She moved mechanically, smiling when she had to, but the spark was missing.
The bell above the door chimed. Nia glanced up, expecting another customer. She froze. Standing in the doorway was Dante, but he wasn't wearing a suit, and he wasn't wearing the fake flannel costume. He was wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked normal, just a dad. And he wasn't alone. Holding his hand, staring around the diner with wide, saucer-like eyes, was a little girl. She was clutching a raggedy stuffed elephant. Nia's breath caught in her throat. Sophie. Dante didn't walk to a booth. He didn't hide. He walked straight up to the counter, leading Sophie. The diner seemed to quiet down around them. "Hi," Dante said. His voice was quiet, humble. Nia looked at him, her grip tightening on the coffee pot. "Dante, you shouldn't be here. I know. I'm not here to bother you. I'm not here to give you anything. But Sophie wanted to meet the lady who makes the best coffee in Chicago." Sophie stepped forward. She was shy, hiding slightly behind Dante's leg. She looked up at Nia. "Hi," Sophie whispered. Nia's heart melted. The anger she had been holding on to for 2 weeks began to crack. She put the coffee pot down and leaned over the counter. "Hi, sweetie. I'm Nia. I know. Daddy talks about you all the time." Nia looked up at Dante. He looked vulnerable, exposed. Sophie reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded drawing. She held it up to Nia. "This is for you. It's us." Nia took the paper. She unfolded it. She looked at the stick figures holding hands. She looked at the brown braids. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at Dante.
"I hid the money," Dante said, his voice barely audible over the diner noise, "because I was terrified that if you knew who I was, you'd stop seeing me. But I was wrong. I was wrong to hide the truth. The house is yours, Nia. No strings attached. You never have to speak to me again. But I would trade every single dollar in that bank just to have one more cup of coffee with you." He waited. Nia looked at the drawing. She looked at Sophie's hopeful face, and then she looked at Dante. She didn't see the billionaire who bought the bank. She saw the man who burned pancakes. She saw the father who loved his daughter. She saw the man who had been scared to be lonely. She realized that the lie hadn't been malicious. It had been a shield, and he had lowered it. A small, weary smile touched her lips. She wiped a tear from her cheek. "You're an idiot, Dante Winslow," she whispered. Dante let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 2 weeks. A massive weight lifted off his shoulders. "I know. And that suit you wore to the bank was ridiculous," she added, sniffing. "I burned it," Dante lied, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Nia laughed. It was a watery, broken sound, but it was the most beautiful thing Dante had ever heard. She reached for a clean mug. She poured the dark roast, the steam rising between them. She slid it across the counter toward him. "This one isn't on the house," she said, her eyes locking onto his. "You can afford to tip now." Dante smiled. He picked up the mug. "I think I can manage that." 6 months later. The silence in the penthouse was gone. It was a Sunday morning. The living room was a mess of toys. Sophie was chasing a new puppy down the hallway, shrieking with laughter. In the kitchen, the smell of bacon filled the air. Nia was standing at the stove, wearing one of Dante's oversized t-shirts, flipping eggs. Dante leaned against the doorframe, watching them. He still had the billions. He still had the company. He still had the power. But as he watched Nia scoop Sophie up and spin her around, listening to their combined laughter echo off the marble walls, Dante knew the truth. He had spent his whole life chasing wealth. But true wealth wasn't what he had in his pocket. It wasn't the numbers on a screen. True wealth was the noise in this room. True wealth was having someone who knew your secrets and loved you anyway. True wealth was who you had by your side. And for the first time in his life, Dante Winslow was truly a rich man.